Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Latina Mental Health Series. You are here with Norma Garcia. On behalf of Latina professionals, we're so excited to bring you the second week of bringing awareness to mental health. As you may know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so it's important for us to be able to create community and a platform and a space to be able to have these very important conversations in order to continue raising awareness on this very, very important topic that I know I am very passionate about. So for me, I'm so excited to be here and continue advocating for our mental health. For those of you that are joining us, thank you so much for being here. Please let us know where it is that you're joining us from, your industry, and what is it that you're looking forward to today. So please use a chat to let us know, as well as throughout the presentation and workshop. Use it to be able to engage with us and also other individuals that will be joining us today. Today it's going to be such a great topic in which we're going to talk about anxiety and how anxiety shows up for us as Latinas, specifically in the professional realm, but also in our personal life. We have an amazing guest today that's going to be joining me in this very, very important conversation about anxiety. Before I welcome her in, again, please chime in. Let us know where you're coming from. What are you looking forward to today? What are you hoping to get out of? Happy Friday. I myself I'm coming live from Los Angeles, California. So over here in the West Coast. I know that in other platforms, I've seen people show up here from all over the states, even out of the country. So I love the diversity of everyone that joins in and tunes in and is in this together. So I see some people coming in from Washington, from Northern Cal, Oakland, from Chicago. Beautiful. Awesome. So keep on letting us know where you're from. I am going to invite a very special guest today. She is tuning in from Dallas, Texas. So happy that she was able to join this conversation. Let me bring her to the screen. Her name is Claudia Yvette Lampo. Yay! Hola!
Hola, hola,
Bienvenida.
hola. Buenas tardes a todos. Thank you
Yay!
so much, Norma, for having me in this space, and love that we can have a conversation today and engage with everybody out there. I know that I think you guys can see us, but I can't see the people who are watching this. But so that's so cool. If they can put in where they're from, I can at least in my head already picture Los Angeles and the beautiful skyline of Chicago. And so, yes, please keep those comments coming, just so that at least I can imagine your space and the environment you inhabit.
Yeah. So why don't we begin, Claudia, with introducing ourselves and who we are, so our audience get acquainted to what we
Mhm.
do and how it is that we support our Latinx community. So again, my name is Norma Garcia. I'm a licensed clinical therapist here in Los Angeles, California, also a breakup coach and intuitive healer. For the past 10 years, I've devoted my time specifically in working with BIPOC Latinx community in regards to supporting their mental health. I'm really passionate in empowering Latinas and women of color to really do the inner work, heal within, and be able to thrive in your life, career, and relationships. My ultimate mission is to continue, raising awareness on mental health, breaking generational cycles, and just creating a bigger impact within our community. And something that I want to share with myself today that we will talk about in terms of like how it relates to anxiety, but I myself am a first-gen Latina. I know that there's many of you here that can relate to being a first-gen. So I'll be able to provide that perspective, but also here with Claudia, she's going to tell us a little bit more of the perspective she's going to bring in as a Latina, being that she is from Mexico. So without further, Claudia, she is a bilingual counselor and neurofeedback therapist coming in from Dallas, Texas. Please, help us welcome her. And Claudia, let us know exactly, what it is that you do, who you serve.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so interesting. I've always people just started with I said Claudia, I said Yvette, and I think I connect my name a lot with even just being a Latina, because if you usually have like four names. Lample is my marriage name. My is Reina Ramos. It'd be so Claudia Yvette Reina Ramos. That's a very Latina name. And Claudia Yvette, Claudia, if you grow up speaking Spanish, but if you don't, it's like Claudia. So I always went by Yvette just because I think about how in our culture, language, and how you pronounce your name, it also means a lot to you. So I just say that not because you did it wrong or anything, but just to kind of even make a connection on what how do we connect with our culture, our race, even being Latinos, whether you are in a Spanish speaking country or in the United States. I'm an immigrant and I came here just as an adult later in life and completed my studies here in Dallas, Texas. I'm a licensed marriage and professional counselor and licensed marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor here in the state of Texas, and have worked, clinical experience over 15 years, and mainly with the Spanish community, Spanish speaking community of parents emigrating to this country and their kids being first generation Americans or also immigrants. So I've loved working with the Latino community in terms of family systems and how they integrate into their new environment and collectively are assimilating into a new culture while still maintaining their roots. I just really love being part of that journey for them. And as a neurotherapist, I have just really loved the process of bringing the neuroscience into mental health well-being, and not only as a systemic therapist of seeing the whole family, just really seeing our own self through the connection of mind, body, the system of the complexity of the brain and that brain health, and just putting all of those things together have been just really rewarding as a clinician, but also very helpful for my clients.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's really important, right? Especially as we do this work. I know when I work with my community, like culture is so important. Like I cannot bring healing without, taking culture, language, all of that, into consideration. So I love that this platform, right, is created for that, where we can, speak on that and incorporate it because they coexist, together. So thank you, Claudia. We're so happy that you're here and are able to bring your knowledge and your expertise in terms of like mental health, healing, right? Especially holistically, like the mind, body, and soul. And so why don't we start up the conversation, in today, right? The topic about anxiety, right? The anxiety it's a term, it's a common term, and it's one of the most common mental health symptoms that I think across the board, regardless of what race, ethnicity, or status that you're in, we all experience it. And so why don't we kick off the conversation and just even talking about like what is anxiety and how is it that anxiety manifests and how it shows up, right, in the different levels of ourselves in terms of, mentally, our mind, our body, our physiological part of ourselves, and even our spirit, right? And how culture as well can impact the way that the anxiety shows up.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's important that as we talk to insight, so prevalent in our, experience of as a a human experience, and to distinguish worry, normal worry, or concerns that we all have just for the fact that we are humans, and then when anxiety becomes problematic, and that differentiating both will be important, because I think we all worry at
Hmm.
times, we all get preoccupied, and maybe sometimes we're not able to fall asleep because we're thinking about something important. But anxiety, when it becomes debilitating, is that excessive worry that also has this fear component that is debilitating you now in being able to either perform your job, affecting your body, your mind, and even in your relationships. And you're not able to really do what you wish to do, because now anxiety and that fear is become an obstacle for you to move forward. So that's one of the things we really have to address. One is my worry has now become really anxiety, that it is there affecting me and not just a human experience.
Mm.
And I think culture, in terms of, we're talking here being Latinas, or me identifying myself from my culture and my family of origin, how that also seems to be having some differences, and also some peculiarities. Some people might really experience their anxiety more in their body, right?
Mm.
And others might feel it more in their way of thought and how the mind ruminates. And so, even being attuned to knowing self and recognizing, where do I feel my worry, my anxiety? Is this worry, or is this really just debilitating? I
Mm.
might not have a mental awareness, but my body is really struggling. And
Mhm.
is that due to anxiety?
Mm.
So I think that's I saw something interesting that I've seen in just in my life, but also with clients and families, whether you're a child or an adult, how it is different. Not everybody experience anxiety the same way. It has those same um, characteristics of that excessive worry, concern, or fear. But some people might experience it more of
Mm.
a physical experience. They're more attuned to that, to their bodies, and others might don't recognize that and have more of a mental awareness of it. So I think that's interesting to just point out.
Yeah, and having that awareness piece first, like understanding where it is that the anxiety is coming through, right? When we think of anxiety, right, these are like the thoughts, the worries, the preoccupations, right, the underlying fear, like you mentioned. And then when that comes up physiologically, we have a reaction, right? And some of those physical common symptoms, right? Heart beating fast, butterflies in the stomach, digestive issues, sometimes like body temperature changing, sweating, your extremities get cold, and everyone experiences differently, but there's like similarities in that. Some dizziness, some people faint. I think the most common one, and you can agree, Claudia, is like sometimes with anxiety so intense it can become like a panic attack or anxiety attack, where it feels like we're having a heart attack, right? And the thing with the physiological symptoms with anxiety, it mimics as if, right, there is a physical health issue or concern, right? Because the symptoms are very similar.
Mm-hmm. And being a professional, or if you are taking care of somebody, whether you're
Mm.
a parent or are in leadership, or to some extent you have to manage a lot of times the stressors that then become toxic stress, that then leads to anxiety. And how do people manage to then go out and still perform to some extent sacrificing a lot of their resources because they have to kind of wear a full on bodysuit and mask to keep that anxiety at bay so that they can perform their job as professionals or parents or
Mm-hmm.
however it is that they're called to do in this world. And it does has a detriment to their overall health. And so I think here we're all coming together here as professional and Latina in the Latino community and recognizing, what am I doing to also take care of myself and do this thing that I love to do, my profession, my job. How
Mm-hmm.
do I balance both? Because I still want to be part of this that I love.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Mhm.
there's some questions coming in that I do want to take a moment to be able
Sure.
to address. The other thing I just wanted to add with anxiety is to normalize, right? Like anxiety is actually good to have, right? It's one of those emotions. All of our emotions serve a certain function, but anxiety is good in terms of that it lets us know, right? It's a way to protect us, right? When there is danger, right? When there is maybe something that could happen. When we think of like our survival, our survival mechanisms, right? Our fight, flight, or freeze response. And I think you can speak on this more, Claudia, is that the anxiety does let us know, right? It prepares, protects us, right? It helps us survive. What happens though with anxiety though is that there's a difference between what's a real danger or a danger that's going to happen at that moment versus a perceived danger, right? And sometimes our brain thinks, right? Our brain doesn't really know, right? But our brain reacts as if there's a real danger happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did want to just bring that up, right? In terms of like that anxiety it's actually a healthy emotion to have. What happens is that when it starts debilitating or impairing your functioning, right? That's when it can become problematic, right? Would you agree, Claudia?
Yes, yes, I think, when you think about your nervous system, in terms of how the nervous system interacts between sympathetic response, which we can think about fly and fight responses in moments
Mhm.
of needing to really find a way to get out of the thing that is causing the fear, and then the parasympathetic response, which is going back into a heart rate that is a resting heart rate where we're clear, thinking clearly. We're not responding because of an emergency, but rather now we are safe. And those interactions between is not that one is good or better than the other, but having the ability to know that I am safe,
Mhm.
even if this, I have a test coming up tomorrow, right? That is really important for me, or, but it doesn't have to be so overwhelming that my whole body really feels that I have a tiger outside my door as soon as I'm going to walk out. And
Yeah.
so, really helping the body differentiate that becomes problematic when someone is suffering from anxiety,
Mhm.
where there is really a fear and a tiger after us every single moment. The body is always in hypervigilance,
Mhm.
and you know, the brain is producing a lot of cortisol, more than what we need, and the digestive system again is can't properly work. You don't even can put food on your stomach because it makes you feel sick.
Mhm.
So yeah, not just the mind has a connection with the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, very important differentiation between the normalized stress that help us activate and motivate us to do something that is important to us versus the debilitating anxiety that then becomes problematic to our health and actually paralyzes us.
Yeah.
The anxiety can become so extreme that can keep us from in a cell
Mhm.
where we're not able to do, we begin to put walls around us because it is so fearful to be engaging.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And one question that was brought up, which we were gonna touch about, was, how is it that anxiety, right, specifically for us Latinas, right? How I manifest, and even just the roles and the responsibilities that we carry as women and other identities, right? As first gens, as immigrants, right? As the eldest daughter, how those roles itself, right, can even bring more of the anxiety because of the responsibilities that we have, right? The caretaking, putting others first, right? Having to put our needs to the side. So I definitely want to, talk about what those experiences are like. And for any of you that are here, right, feel free to also share your experience in terms of like, how has it been for you in terms of your identity and how you feel like anxiety shows up within you. For me, I am a first gen, so and I'm the only daughter of my family, so I have three siblings. So for me, a lot of the anxiety comes around, right, being able to take care of my family, being the nurturing one, right, making sure that like financially I'm well, right. So there's a lot of pressure, and there's just constant worry of like I have to succeed, I have to do the best, I have to be perfect, right. And especially right, because we're so hyper dependent, hyper functioning, right, that it's like we then learn how to function with the anxiety, right.
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
I love that comment. I think that's probably one that I was very interested very early, even before I went into study, to becoming a counselor. It was that connection of how is it within my family and just even culture, because I was kind of looking around and paying attention, that worry was almost equivalent to love.
mm,
In Spanish, there's a word preocuparse.
sí.
That's a word that is often used when you are sharing with someone that I care about you. Me preocupa.
Mhm, mhm,
Me preocupa cómo estés. I really kind of worry how you are doing. And it was so kind of meshed with loving and caring that it was just very kind of difficult to distinguish how can I love and care without the worry. And
mm,
so that was very important to be able to de-entangle, because it was the worry emotion actually produces a different frequency in the heart, right? Emotions such as worry, fear, anger, shame, guilt are emotions that produce a different type of frequency that is sending a message through the vagus nerve to our brain of, hey, there's a concern here, activate,
mhm,
that sympathetic response again. Whereas emotions such as love, appreciation, gratitude, feeling proud, um, those create a different frequency on how the heart sends information to the brain. And
mhm,
that access the parasympathetic response, which is that sense of safety. And so, very interesting how, without really the intention of having a sympathetic response, by having the worry and pairing it with this, I worry because I love you,
mhm,
you are actually creating a frequency that is activating the anxiety,
mm,
right?
mhm,
And so that's something that was very common to see when I was also helping treating families, the Latino families, and how they were really struggling. Parents really struggled to almost, it was almost like, what are you talking about? How can I not worry about my child if I love my child? And so it was really difficult at the beginning for them to even detangle that. But as we continue, the process and really understanding on that connection, it was you can still care and love without the worry, and how that allowed those parents to really connect more with the children. They can still believe me, you will worry if there is a concern. There is no way not to not stop loving of caring.
mhm,
It will show up whenever that is necessary. It's not like you suddenly are never going to worry. when you should, that's going to
Mhm.
show up. It was more about being able to detangle that was producing more anxiety, really, when it wasn't not helpful. Does that make sense? I hope that, and if people out there in the audience, as you're listening to this, if you can chime in. I don't know if this resonate with any of you, but this was something that I saw very often with the, all the families that I have treated over the years, and but even within my own personal life experience and
Mm,
my relationship with my own, with my mother, and in my community, this idea of worry and concern was also almost simultaneously merged with love and caring.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's something that, especially as Latinas and how we're conditioned, right, culturally, societally, in terms of the different roles that we carry, how we take on not just our worries, but we also take on other people's worries, right? And we do things because we care, right? Because we please others, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes that too can come from either like a trauma response or because we've been in survival mode.
Mhm.
We've been in survival mode, like we just have to get things done, or just go, 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 right? And sometimes because we're in that mode of the constant, like, what's the next thing I have to do, right? That can also leave us right in a place where then it's hard for us to slow down or rest, right? And I think that's where I think for us, right, like me specifically as like a first and Latina, right, I feel this high, that have to be always high functioning. That when it comes to resting or slowing down, it can be really difficult because we feel guilty, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's similar to almost feeling that if I allow myself to feel that sadness or that take care of talk about my worry or even the anger, right? That it could lead to a weakness, a lack of character. Um, you know, what if I go there? Then how am I going to be able to get back on and fulfill, my wish, or not my wish, but my desire to continue and to thrive? If I pay
Mm-hmm.
attention, if I rest, will I be able to get up? If I really talk about my worry, will that worry become bigger? So
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times, I know we know, like this month, mental health awareness wasn't something that has been there for decades, right? So even bringing awareness to that, the mental health, having a space now where we feel more freely to talk about that, and even normalizing these emotions that in the past were honestly, you just didn't talk about it. Families didn't talk about it. It was, let's just move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Claudia, I'm wondering if you can share your experience. I was talking about like the first gen experience, but for you being an immigrant and what that's been like for you in terms
Yeah.
of how that affects your anxiety. Um,
Yeah. Um, I don't know if for me, in terms of, because I was also thinking, and what are some things that we do as a Latino community that help us with taking care of ourselves when we're anxious. And so I was really reflecting about what is it that I do that is very supportive to me when I'm feeling anxious. And being an immigrant, one of the things that is important to me, I think it's going back to the roots. And of course, I cannot always get on a plane and get back to seeing a friend, or to even being around my city where I was born and grew up.
mhm,
But even a song that reminds me of a time when I was there, it's very supportive. Um, Cooking a meal that was something my grandmother used to make and we did together, listening, like I mentioned, music, cooking, and even the smell of rain. It's pretty amazing when you think about how the brain takes information and what it does to your memory. As an immigrant, when this rains in the city, it reminds me a lot of Mexico City because it rains a lot in the afternoons.
Mm,
And there's some things that I will do to kind of take care of myself and remind me of my grounding source and my roots. That it just all of that support of generational support of the ancestors really come into me,
mm,
despite the fact that now I have put roots in another country. And but as an immigrant, I think just constantly balancing that of where I come from,
mm,
what has been part of me, that continues to support me despite the fact that I might not be right there next door.
mhm,
So I think that's something I'm very aware of
mm,
on how, and I imagine that even for, within the country, people who emigrate from different cities might maybe find some similarities to my example on how they take care of themselves when they found themselves worried or anxious, how they pull from the roots to connect back to a grounding force.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Okay. So next, we're gonna move into talking about some tools and strategies to be able, to manage anxiety when it does come up. Before we do that, though, let me pull up some questions to see if we
Sure.
address them in our conversation or if we need to add more to it. One of them came from Areli asking if we can touch on the topic of high functioning anxiety and feeling like if you aren't constantly doing something, you feel like you're lazy. It can be hard to find the time to rest. And when you do, you feel guilty.
Yes, Areli, this is really a concern of just everybody at this time. I don't know if only us, the Latino community, experience that, but it's almost like a new standard that the busier you are, the more status you have in the professional world. That has become, it used to be, maybe status came from how much you had in the bank or what you had in your home, but it sounds to me like now status, the new status has become how busy people are.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to kind of very be careful because culture and environmental um, examples really create an expectation of what we should be as professionals. And so just to almost be aware of that, of like there is this standard of performance that the busier I am, the more important I am, or the more successful I am, just to kind of being aware of that so that we don't fall into the trap of being always chasing after something or not being able to just sit down, put the phone away, and just really have your cup of coffee without at the same time working on something. Um, and I think that also impacts our ability to even for our brain's performance of attention and actually doing the best work we can. The more we multitask, the worse it is for the brain to actually do something well. So multitasking is the opposite of what we believe. We're getting a lot more accomplished. It's actually limiting the brain's ability to perform well. So
Mm,
that could be something that as professionals we just can keep in mind and said, actually, when I'm only doing one thing at a time and pausing and taking my break, I am increasing my brain's ability to do the best work.
mm, mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that brings me to the topic of mindfulness, what we'll get to shortly, right? Being able to slow down and do thing one thing at a time. And it's not that the anxiety, the goal is for the anxiety to not be there anymore, right? But how can you befriend it when it is there, and how can you make it function
Yes.
for you? Yeah. So we'll
Yep.
pull up one more question before we go into the strategies. Does our community expect a lot from us? I think that might create some stress. How do you balance work to take care of others, to take care of ourselves, and our culture thinking you first is not well seen. And I think this is a good segue into talking about, right, how do we take care of ourselves? Because I think there is this, our community does expect a lot. And it's, again, this could be generational, right, culturally, in terms of like, even when we think about like generational trauma or the cycles or the patterns that are being, passed down to us, right? And how we also take that with us, right? And now there's also this new phenomenon, right, of being cycle breakers, right? Being able to break those cycles and patterns, right, that we feel don't work for us anymore.
Yeah. No, it's so important to recognize healthy boundaries. And
Mhm.
often, if we didn't know what that was growing up, and maybe also things change, right, in families, and so now boundaries, my maybe as adults we're setting boundaries that before we were not able to set boundaries. And so I think setting those boundaries also within the self will eventually begin to manifestate in everything around us, in our relationships and in our professional lives. But I do think that the communities will always expect more, or even at work, right? But is are we aware of our limitations in terms of the balance between work and rest? Do we have that for
Mm,
ourselves so that we can then set those boundaries?
yeah. And boundaries itself, that's a whole another topic.
Sure.
But I'm glad that you're bringing that up because it is important. It is important that we are able to recognize what our needs are and how do we take care of our needs. And sometimes that may mean having to put ourselves first. It may mean having to be selfish, and that can create tension, right? Conflict with our loved ones, our families, our environments, right? Especially if they're used to you operating a certain way.
Right. I will say I wouldn't even call it selfish, but rather one tweak. I
Mhm.
will, and usually I will do this. I will give this to the mothers, parents. I said, if you don't give to yourself, you are giving nothing to your child. Right,
Mm,
you eventually are going to come in on empty where you won't be able to give any more patience. You're going to run out of patience. You're going to actually run out of being able to listen to the child because you haven't given that to you.
mm,
So, very, very important that it's actually very beneficial to the love that they'll provide to others or their work in their profession. As they begin to give more to themselves, things will really flourish out there.
mm, mhm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we get into right the strategies, right, and we kind of already mentioned a few, right? Maybe we can focus on what are some things that we can do whenever it is, right? And there's different strategies in terms of like they're more like body centered, right, versus like your thoughts, your cognitions, right?
Yeah, I think it's really important, even, within a culture, we all have individual differences. And so I want to make sure that each and one of you out there just begin to even acknowledge what is something that really nurtures me and gives me back that is not necessarily just a distraction. I want us to recognize one is, yes, I want to go to Cancun and take that amazing vacation, but I don't want to just come back to the grind again and be back to the same place before I left and went on vacation. So it's not a necessarily a what can I do to escape the anxiety, but rather what is something I can do every day that
Mm,
really brings a sense of renewing and balance. So it doesn't have to be an extravagant vacation or even going, dancing for 2 days straight. That's awesome. But can you create little small things every day that can replenish you? So you bring more resilience and awareness to when your body and mind are needing the break, so that you don't have to completely disappear in order to renew. Um, some of those exercises can be as simple as every moment, particularly if you're in a profession where you have to move from one to the other very quickly, or you've been asked to complete tasks, multitasking constantly, or even you leave your work and you're coming home and there's another task waiting for you. Just having a transition time,
Mm,
whether that is a 1 minute or a 5 minute, it really doesn't have to be a 30 minute. I mean, if you have 30 minutes, great. But
mhm,
sometimes we literally just have minutes. And if
mhm,
you can transition using 1 minute when you finish something to go to the other one and just connect with the self. I do that by, just like I did right now, actually just literally used to place my hand over my heart as a way of connecting and just checking in, do some breathing exercises, and maybe you even visualize something, bring to mind something that provides you a renewing emotion, such as gratitude. You can think about something that had made you feel proud of yourself, a place that makes you feel at peace, and just connect with that. Or acknowledging that I've just finished this, now I'm going into that. So it's very simple. It almost seems like, really, is that going to help me? Believe me, it will, because you're allowing yourself to move to time and space with full awareness and intention rather than with reactivity.
mm, mhm,
Reacting to the events creates more anxiety versus moving with consciousness and intention. So that
mm,
will be something. And again, I mentioned earlier in terms of, for me particularly, there's the cooking, there's the music, there's just certain aspects that do bring get me out of the work mode and into that spiritual, that journeying piece of connecting with something bigger than myself, that really takes me out of the loop of worry when I'm ruminating too much about something.
mm,
So those are some that I have. Nature is extremely powerful. So really being connected to, there's been a lot of research in the emotion of awe, and that's coming up pretty strongly. And one of the emotion of awe produces this different interaction on how we perceive life. And so to me, being out in nature really does that. So the more you can, I'm taking those walks, exercising, just allowing yourself to move and see the expansion of the world, get you out of your head, really, and
mhm,
just really brings things into perspective. So that's another one that I did a lot with the families I work with. We actually went out into camps and we took the children and the families out into nature for a few days to get them out of the grind.
mhm,
And it was amazing to see how their mind and their overall energy was shifting once we're out there in the woods.
mhm,
Even when people were afraid of being out there because they, gosh, I don't want to be with the spiders and the blah. There was, not everybody was nature, all about nature like I was. But just being disconnecting to connect with self again was very powerful on how their levels of anxiety and worry
mhm,
decrease.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And if I can add, I mean, it would be great, right, if we can access nature or do things right immediately when we are feeling, anxious. I do also want to acknowledge that there's times that we're not going to be able to do that, right?
Mhm.
So even taking moments to visualize, think about what would it be like to be there, right? The other one strategy that I love to help my clients with, and it's super easy with like grounding, right? Grounding yourself using like your five senses, right? Like wherever you are, no matter where you are, right? Focusing on what's in front of you, right? Like what do you see, what do you smell, Is there anything around you that you can touch, right? I find that physical touch is one of the most powerful ways to like ground and soothe yourself, especially when you have those physical symptoms arising, right? Being able to smell things, right? Being able to hear things, right? Music is the most universal, right, language and calming, I think skill that we have access to, right? So being able to, like you said, like take those moments and pause, right? And being able to focus on things that are in front of you to kind of get you out of what's happening inside and focus outside, right? Um, that's like one other like quick strategy, right? Like to ground yourself using like your five senses. Um, that way you can do that anywhere, anytime. And it really helps, right? And for everyone, it's going to be different. Like really finding like what's going to soothe you, right? What's going to calm you, and then being able, to incorporate that, like Claudia said, like on a day to day, right? A lot of the times we wait until we're ready, the high anxiety, high stress, high emotion, and when we're there, it's a lot harder to bring ourselves down, right? So I like to check in with myself. Okay, how am I feeling right now? Like, what do I need? And start implementing little things at a time to kind of bring that like manage those levels much lower than when it's already out there, right? So there's so many things, with anxiety in terms of strategies and techniques, right? But hopefully those that we provided were it's a good start for you to start practicing. If it is after today's conversation, you would like additional support or want more strategies, I can make myself available to help you and support you. Claudia, I'm sure can also provide us some additional, strategies, maybe in the chat, in terms of, things that we talked about or additional things that we can do. Because we are running out of time, Claudia, I'm wondering if we can end today with you guiding us through an exercise.
Sure.
Um, and then leaving some room for Q&A. And if we aren't able to get to all the questions after today's live, we'll be able to go back into the chat and be able to address it within the chat. And if not, we can always message you separately as well.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Let's do it. I love the fact that we can come in as a community right now and really connect together through a moment of mindfulness and appreciation. So
Mhm.
feel, you know, get comfortable in your chair. If you just for a moment, it won't be very long. So don't worry. I won't keep you here for too long on the mindfulness moment. I know that you guys have places to go to. But as you get comfortable in your chair, try to find a spot that you are looking at that is just one that you can rest your eyes, right? So, one that is not necessarily too busy, but, and again, it's not too hyper focused on something, but really just to rest your eyes. You can even close your eyes if that's comfortable with you too. And that just allows your attention to go inward rather than to kind of stay out here and create distraction for you. And then just very gently, just begin to notice your breath. Just notice how it goes in through your nose and how slowly either you breathe out through your mouth or through your nose, however is comfortable for you. You can even roll your shoulders back gently, just making little circles and just recognizing if there's any tension that you've been holding on your shoulders or even your neck. And if that's the case, allow your body to move in whatever direction is wanting you to do it. And continue to breathe in and out gently to support your movement if necessary. As you find yourself now connecting with yourself in this way by just paying attention to the breath, I like to invite you to just bring attention to your heart area. You can either place your hand over your heart or just even imagine the area of your heart and your heart. And the invitation of just giving gratitude to yourself for just being who you are, not because of your degrees or your accomplishments of what you are doing, but just because of who you are without anything that is accountable. And if that sometimes is difficult, then I just want you to then think of something, someone, or a place that it is very important to you that has brought joy to your life, and then connect with that and allow that to sink into your heart almost like a blanket, covering it and feeling that experience. And I hope everybody can really identify that. Again, sometimes it might be hard to identify it in ourselves, that unconditional love. But sometimes it's easier to see it in something other than ourselves, like a person, a place, a thing. And just visualize that a little bit more. If you have your eyes closed, you can begin to open them and just continue now to gently shift your attention back into your breath, noticing how it comes in and out. And gently, you can bring your sight back into us to just kind of connect with each other again.
That was so beautiful, Claudia.
Good. I'm
I
glad.
I definitely felt my body, already shift. So thank you so much for guiding us
Good.
in that exercise, and just thank you so much for being here, and having this conversation with me to continue bringing light, right, to these real things that are true for us, right?
Yes,
Um,
it's been my pleasure.
and then we continue, right, like taking, this is one conversation, but being able to continue it with like our family, our friends, with our coworkers, right? I know with mental health there could be a lot of stigma and like shame about talking about it, but it's really empowering when we are able to name and be authentic with our experiences. And I do believe specifically in our community, right, it's becoming more talked about and accepted and known, right? So thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you everyone who joined us today. Hopefully that anything that we mentioned resonated. Claudia, if you can please in the chat, if you want to share your information in case anyone wants to contact you. I'll also share my information as well. There was a question about accessing therapy resources, so we'll be able to also help you out with that as well, depending on on where you live, because therapists can only practice within their state. So for example, I can only see clients in California. Glad can only see clients in Texas. um, but yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so
we're here at Advanced Neurofeedback and Family Therapy Center, and we provide neurofeedback services, which is a type of brain biofeedback, heart rate variability biofeedback, and counseling. So we're an integrative approach that just kind of combines the neuroscience and the counseling to really bring best functioning, but just overall well-being for our clients here in Dallas, Texas. And it's been such a wonderful opportunity to share the space with you, Norma, and to just happy Friday of everyone out there.
much.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Yeah.